Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today I'm here with another lecture of public administration. Firstly, we will study about one contributor of classical school of thought, and we will move towards the human relations school of public administration. Last time we were studying the classical school of thought, and now we will move towards human relations school. But first we will study about the one contributor that was left in the last lecture. So that was Hawthorne studies. Alton Muir and Ruthless Berger and other undertook the famous experiment at Hawthorne plant of the Western Electric Company at Chiario, Illinois and USA between 1927 to 1932. So this experiment was basically held at the electric company of the Chiario and experiment at the Hawthorne plant of the Western Electric Company placed and two groups of employees doing the same work into the separate room. Okay, what they basically have decided that that was an electric company, of course, and people were working. So they have decided to do an experiment. What they have done, they have divided the people in the organization, or we can say in the company, in the two groups. One group was known as test group and second group was known as control group. So what they have to do, both the group have to perform in the different rooms, like one group was performing in a different room and another group was performing in a different room. Both the groups were provided with different lights, like if one group uh, was in right light, the other group was in uh, low, or we can say dim light. One group was provided with the maximum facilities, the other group was not provided with the maximum facilities. And what they have to do, they have to check at the end of the day if both the groups are performing well or not. So, as we have already discussed, that both the groups were performing in different rooms in different scenario. Like the light was different at one place, or in one room the light was bright, in another room the light was dim. In first room maybe they were provided with the food as well, but in another room they were not provided with the enough food. In one room they were provided with the like midday rest. In another room the midday rest was not even provided. So all of these facilities, they is for the particular experiment. And what was the result at the end of the day? Surprisingly, both the groups performed equally. Like even if the light was dim in one room, they have performed equally with like the group which have performed in the bright light. Even they were not provided with the right food, or we can say the right rest time, but ultimately they have performed equally like the group one. So the studies basically like this particular experiment basically resulted that uh, even if you don't provide the enough facilities to your worker, but if you give them some kind of special treatment, ultimately they perform rightly. Like what the organization have to do, organization has to keep an eye on its workers. And if organization will keep an eye, and ultimately that will give them special treatment. Like of course it was an experiment, and everyone must be observing that experiment ultimately. But basically whatever the contributors, or we can say the person who was conducting this experiment, thought that the person who won't be provided with enough resources or enough light, or we can say enough food, ultimately they will perform less. But their experiment was not successful, we can say. So Hawthorne studies basically emphasize that organizations are not just machines and tools, but are also social system. Like in any kind of social system, ultimately whenever there is an observing, whenever there is a focus, whenever someone will be looking for something, or someone will be observing a system, ultimately the result will be quite different. Now we will start the human relation approach, or we also know say it as human relation school. This approach started as a relation to the classical approach. It was initiated in 1930s with the human relation movement. So this approach is linked with the classical school, we can say. In this school, some things were some uh, things were added, from the previous school. This movement in 1930, basically there was a movement started as a human relation movement, where it was focused that uh, like in companies or in industries, it is not the efficiency or output which is most important, it is not the profit which is important, but ultimately it is the human resource which is important also. Like whenever you will not respect, you will not provide all the facilities, you will not you will not justify the rights of the human resource in your organization or company, until or unless an organization can be a successful organization. What is human resource? Human resource means the people who are working in that particular organization. So research and theory development in the 1950s and 1960s provided further conceptual grounding to the school of thought. Of course, we will study all of the contributors who have contributed in 1950s and 1950s in this conceptual grounding or in this school of thought. So research and theory development, sorry, the point is repeated. Chester I. Barnard, first contributor of the school. So Chester I. Barnard wrote the most influential book, which was titled as The Function of the Executives. Who are the executives? Executives mean the people who are running an organization, or who are running an industry, or we can say who are running a company, like the CEO of an organization, like the managers in the organizations. So Chester I. Barnard has written this book, which has basically identified the functions of the executives. In his book, he emphasized the following. First, he focuses on the social implications of the organization in response to scientific. Like he said, if an organization or a company is performing different kind of scientific, or we can say scientific functions in the organization, but ultimately it has to also has to focus on the social implications. What are the social implications? Like the organization has to provide the rules and regulations to its human resource. The organization must provide the rights to its human resource. The organization must provide enough, we can say, remuneration, or we can say enough pay to its human resource. Like it is not important to always set your machinery, always make your machinery in the organization best, at the best level. You don't have to always set your production level at the best, but ultimately you also have to satisfy the human resource in the organization. You have to satisfy the people who are working in the organization, either they are managers or either they are some low level staff. Then management theory, he gave the management theory. Barnard added the human component to the work situation. So what management theory basically explains that, the management theory explains that whenever uh, an organization is performing its task effectively and efficiently, uh, then this is called the management. Like whenever an organization is performing its task to achieve a specific goal in an efficient and effective manners. So basically, where is the human component in this whole scenario? The human component is in achieving that goal. Firstly, the human component will formulate that goal or objective which organization will further work to achieve. Then further, what we have to do, we have to basically uh, give our human resources. We have to or we can say organization have to own their human resource, and they must provide them enough facilities to achieve those specific goals. Like whenever a human resource will be satisfied in the organization, ultimately the goal will be achieved in a better way. He argued that the manager's role, including gaining cooperation, defining purpose, and providing a system of communication. He basically said that it is the role of the manager basically to gain the cooperation, like the cooperation between, of course it is a manager who is working as the bridge between the top level management and lower level management. So the manager have to perform its role of being a bridge between top level management to the lower level management. He must define the purposes, like the the lower staff, or we can say the human resource working in an organization must know that what are the purposes, what is the goal of the organization, and ultimately what have they have to achieve at the end of the day. And providing a system of communication, like the manager should have enough information about the company's goals and objectives so he can work to achieve those goals and objectives in the end. He believed that the subordinate was the ultimate source of the authority. He or she chooses whether to accept or reject orders given by the manager. He basically believed that ultimately the manager or the subordinate of the CEO or executive has a proper role in the organization, and ultimately the organization must satisfy that person, because he's the one who basically choose whether to accept or reject orders given the manager. Like ultimately it is not his responsibility, but what if you will not satisfy your manager? At the end of the day, he might not communicate the enough information to its subordinate, who basically has to have to achieve the organizational goals at the end of the day. Then he basically identified the three zones uh, for the employees. The first one is zone of rejection, then zone of acceptance, then zone of indifference. Like there is a zone where an employee is working and he always reject the order from its we can say executive, because he has the authority in the organization and he can reject the decision of its executive whenever he consider that the decision took by the executive is not right decision. But this can't contribute in the development of the organization, because he don't have the enough authority to reject that decision. Then there is zone of acceptance, like always saying yes to your boss. Like even if the decision took by the executive is right or wrong, what the employees in the organization are doing, they are always accepting the decision of their boss, because there is a culture of saying yes boss. Then there's the zone of indifference. This is the, we can say, the best kind of organization or the company where there's a zone of indifference. Like if you consider that your your executive or your top level manager or your chairman is taking any kind of wrong decision, ultimately you can question his decision, you can give your suggestion, and yes, your suggestion will be considered for the decisions of the organization. So this is zone of the indifference, where organization respect the decision of its subordinates and organization consider its decisions if organization think that the suggestion by that particular person is somehow a right we can say suggestion. Then Bernard believed that organization could be improved by adopting a cooperative attitude between the functional units. What are the functional units? Those are worker and managers. Of course, that is an understandable thing, that if there will be a cooperative kind of attitude between the worker and the manager, yes, they will perform ultimately more good for the organization. Then interdepartmental instructions, like coordination among the department. Of course, whenever there is a task in the department or in an organization, the tasks are always coordinated, like they are interdepartmental. If the organization decided to produce more in the organization, what organization has to do? Firstly, the decision will be took at the executive level, then the decision will be moved toward the manager. The manager will give tasks to the account department, like they have to prepare a, or a sheet of expenses and the outcomes, ultimately we can say. After making that account statement, the task will be further given to the production department, like they will identify how that particular goal will be achieved. So each of the instruction in the department is basically interdependent, departmental. uh, for what we have to do, we have to basically coordinate among the departments, like they must not be the indifferences. Like the production department must always ask the account department, like if we have enough budget to do this production, then the sales department must always have to coordinate with the production department, like they must direct them that how much production is needed for the market. Then market department has always have to coordinate with the sales department, that this is the demand, of that particular product, and this is the demand of that particular product, and how much we need to basically invest in the market. Then the cross training of the personnel, training of the employees from different department of the organization. Ultimately, the organization must always focus on the training of its employees in the organization. There must be a cross training. The account department must always give training to the sales department gives training to the market department. So they must know the requirement of the account or sales department or market department to further move in the best way in the organization. And the department and organization must organize different kind of trainings for its different departments specifically, so the worker can perform in a more better way, or we can say in a more organized way. Then the next contributor, that is Herbert Simon. Herbert Simon's contribution was from 1916 to 2001. Herbert Alexander Simon organizations are important because according to him, organization is an important task. Organization is an important place. How it provides the environment and structure that mold and develop personal qualities and habits. Now we are saying that this particular school is all focusing on the human relation. If we It provides the environment and structure that mold and develop the personal qualities and habits. Ultimately, an organization is a place. It must provide an environment or a structure. Structure means the power structure, we can say, or the authority, which must develop the personal qualities and habits of the people or of the person who is working in the organization. Provides those in a responsible position with the means for exercising authority and influence over others. Like ultimately, the one who is at the responsible position, he must exercise his authority to get the better outcomes. Then structures communication determines the environment of information in which decisions are taken. Like ultimately, whenever there is a structure of communication, or there is an environment of communication, or environment of spreading the information in the organization, ultimately Whenever the decision will be taking, the people of the organization can contribute more because they have enough knowledge about that particular scenario, and they can contribute in a best way. So the major contribution of Simon was to understanding of decision making in our organization and artificial intelligence. Like he basically mentioned that in an organization there must be an influential authority who must take the decision, but ultimately the all the people on in the organization must take their part in the decision making process. So at the end of the day, no room left for any of the aspect or for any of the subject. Simon got Nobel Prize in Economics in 1978. So the major contribution of Simon was to understand of decision making in the organization and the artificial intelligence. Like he basically highlighted that the decision making in an organization uh, must be by all the people who are working in the organization. He got the Nobel Prize in economics in 1978. So this is it for today. Thank you so much. Hope to see you in the next lecture, inshallah.